Welcome everyone to this. It is CKTV. It is the Killster bringing it to you, and we are here tonight. I am here tonight, and I'm going to bring you the top 10, in my opinion, the top 10 Royal Rumble pay-per-views in the last, what is it now, over 25 years of the Royal Rumble. Started back in 1988, and it has run right through now to 2016, and I have handpicked my top 10 Royal Rumble pay-per-views, and that's not just if it was my top 10 actual Rumble matches, it might be a different top 10. If it was my top 10 pre-Rumble cards, it might be a bit different, but this is just the whole package of a pay-per-view, the whole event, how it went, and the way it played out. So my top 10 Rumbles are going to be probably mostly Rumbles from the 1990s. The 1989 one is in the top 10, mostly 90s, but there is a few from the early 2000s, maybe even mid 2000s there, that are in my top 10 Royal Rumbles. There has been, as I said, over 25 of them, about 27 I think at this stage, so it's been tough picking out the top 10 in my opinion, but this is just my opinion, but every wrestling fan out there has different opinions. I was watching Gemini 888, Vincent Flair's channel on YouTube, and he has a lot of different opinions from myself. A few other people in the YWC, the YouTube wrestling community, have different opinions on which is the best and which Rumble wins it. As far as Rumbles go, I think there's a few that I haven't named in the top 10 that deserve, as far as the Rumble matches go. For example, the Rumble match from 1998 would maybe deserve a top 10 spot, but the card itself, I wouldn't. I'm trying to think, did I put that in the top 10? I don't think it did, but if it is in there, a perfect example of a Rumble that deserves a top 10 spot would be the 2003 Royal Rumble. But it's not got a top 10 spot because of the undercard. I didn't think was as good as a lot of the undercards for some of the other Rumbles. Another example of a Rumble that maybe could have got a top 10 spot that didn't was the Madison Square Garden 2008 Royal Rumble. And that one, as a matter of trivia, you seen the comeback, of course, for one night only, of Superfly Jimmy Snuka and Roddy Piper, and that was fun. But also from 2000 and the Rumble from 2010 and the 2011 Rumble, which was of course the first ever and only ever 40-man Royal Rumble. Of course, it's traditionally the 30-man over the top rope Royal Rumble. As far as other, this has been, well, you could say maybe duplicated by WCW. They done the World War III concept between 95 and 98. That was interesting, kind of like they tried to make the Rumble bigger and better. They had it in 3 rings. Of course, they had a 60-man over the top rope battle royal, but you could never. It was hard to keep track of things because all 60 were there at once. Whereas the Royal Rumble has a better format. They come in every 1 or 2 minutes, so it's a better kind of a format. So, well, we should probably get into the top 10. I'll be doing the top 5 first of all, and then I'll be having a break to talk about a few honourable mentions, and then there will be the top 5. So, number 10 in the Royal Rumble top 10 history of the Royal Rumble. Of course, the big event is coming up next Sunday night, 2016 Royal Rumble. That's why we're doing this, to count down to that. But number 10 in the top 10 Royal Rumble pay-per-views, in my opinion, of all time. Number 10 has to be, I would give it to the 1997 Royal Rumble. Of course, the '97 Royal Rumble took place in San Antonio, Texas. The Rumble itself was won by Shawn Michaels. Or sorry, that's a mistake. The Rumble itself was won by Stone Cold Steve Austin. He had been eliminated by Bret Hart, and then he came back in and he eliminated Bret Hart when the referees weren't looking at the end. It was a very entertaining Royal Rumble. The undercard was decent enough. It had Triple H, or Hunter Hearst Helmsley at the time, went up against Goldust. Also, other undercard matches from this Rumble was the match between Ahmed Johnson and Farouk. And another one from this card was a match between Vader and The Undertaker. So it was a really good undercard. The Rumble itself had a lot of big names in it, but it had a lot of Mexican names, a lot of Japanese and different nationalities in that Rumble. You know, it was kind of, they brought in people from different organizations for the Royal Rumble that year. And on commentary in the 1997 Royal Rumble was Jerry the King Lawler and, of course, Vince McMahon and Jim Ross, the three-man commentary team, which was entertaining because they of course bounced off each other as far as good chemistry and stuff, and that always helps in these events, especially the Rumbles, because there's ongoing action and you want to hear some play-by-play and colour commentating. So, in my opinion, that was a pretty good Rumble. That's why it's got a top 10 spot. It's at number 10, the 1997 Rumble. As I'm talking, you will see a few images of each Rumble, or of each poster for each Rumble, and it was a decent card. I think it deserves a top 10 spot. 1997 Royal Rumble. The highlight of that would probably be the Stone Cold Steve Austin being very dominant throughout, and it was part of his rise of Austin 316, part of his rise to stardom. Of course, the rivalry between him and Bret Hart was ever growing. Of course, they had that match at Survivor Series 96, and then they went on to be in WrestleMania 13 a few months after the Royal Rumble. So it ended up that Austin didn't get a title shot at WrestleMania. They went on to an In Your House pay-per-view in February of that year, and it was a fatal four-way match. It was called the Final Four, and The Undertaker actually, Shawn Michaels had to vacate his title after beating Psycho Sid in the main event of '97 Rumble. Actually, that was a very good match, by the way. It was a rematch from the Survivor Series of 1996, where Sid had injured Shawn Michaels' manager, and he had been, of course, it was a big emotional kind of a storyline, and it was Sid v Michaels, and of course Michaels beat him on the big night in his hometown, San Antonio, Texas. So that made it a lot more, you were able to invest emotionally in the whole thing. So it was a good storyline and it worked. So yes, as I was saying, in the Final Four pay-per-view, Sid actually came out on top, I believe, and it was actually Bret Hart, I think, came out on top of that, and then Sid beat him again then the next night for the title, and Sid went into WrestleMania as champion. Undertaker went up against Sid at WrestleMania, and The Undertaker, of course, won the title at WrestleMania 13. But this Royal Rumble was good for storyline. A lot of big storylines were really captured at this 1997 Royal Rumble. Okay, moving on to number 9 in the top 10 Royal Rumbles of all time. Number 9, in my opinion, has to be a year after the last one we talked about, the 1998 Royal Rumble. And in 1998, a lot of big changes had happened in the WWF at the time, and it was the Attitude Era had just come in, and they changed the traditional WWF logo to the Scratch logo, which was more of a kind of hip and in kind of a logo, and then they really did aim and gear towards that younger demographic of the 90s and the the younger demographic of the teenagers and early 20s age group, rather than the kids and rather than the traditional wrestling fans that had been up until that point. They changed everything, changed the whole look of the company in January 1998, and they had been aiming towards changing it from mid 97. But the 98 Rumble, Stone Cold Steve Austin won his second Royal Rumble in 1998 in more dominant fashion this time. He, of course, eliminated The Rock in the last two in the ring, and that was the precursor to a massive rivalry between Austin and The Rock for years to come. Also, Austin, he was like he was the marked man going into the '98 Rumble, and really entertaining Royal Rumble match. We've seen the Honky Tonk Man return at the Royal Rumble in '98. We also some good matches. A big match before the Rumble was Goldust versus Vader. That was one of the pre-Rumble card matches. In my opinion, the pre-Rumble card was weaker than the '97 pre-Rumble card. I do think that the title was, let me think now, was the title on the line at the '98 Rumble, the world title. Yes, indeed. Shawn Michaels defended the WWF Championship against The Undertaker in a casket match at the '98 Rumble, and that was entertaining. That was a good match. And actually, a little trivia fact there, Michaels was thrown out of the ring by The Undertaker, and his lower back hit the edge of the casket, and he actually had slip discs in his back because of that. And he, because of also drug addiction and stuff, he had to end up taking 4 years off from his career in the next three to 4 years, and he came back, of course, triumphantly in 2002. So Shawn Michaels was badly affected by the Rumble in '98, and then he went into the WrestleMania 14 main event against Stone Cold Steve Austin, who had won the Rumble to earn his place in that. And of course Tyson was involved, and Mike Tyson came in and was involved in that. But at WrestleMania 14, Austin had to carry Shawn Michaels because he was in severe pain, and he just wanted to leave because he wasn't in good shape at all as far as his health. So Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker at the Rumble match, that was very good. The Rumble match itself, very entertaining. So 1998 was a good one, and that's at number 9 in our countdown. Okay, number 8 in our countdown now, and of the top 10 Royal Rumble pay-per-views of all time. Here you are watching the Kyoster on CKTV, and number 8 now has to be Royal Rumble is very close to my heart because it's the one that really was when I first started watching the events live on Sky, and that back in 92, 93. The Rumble of 1993 was a big one for me. I often go back and watch the '93 Rumble. Very good Royal Rumble, and a lot of people I heard Gemini. This is one of the things where we differ. Gemini 888 was saying that he didn't really like the '93 Rumble. A few other critics were saying that they weren't too fussed on the 1993 Royal Rumble. I think the Off the Ropes Show podcast was saying that as well as the OSW reviews, I think, mentioned that they didn't like the '93 Rumble. But everyone to their own. I think the undercard was very solid. A decent match between Bam Bam Bigelow and the Big Boss Man. I think it was Bam Bam had just returned from being out of it for a while from the WWF, and he had come in again in late '92, and then the Boss Man was just leaving to go to WCW. So this was the Boss Man's last appearance after the big run that he had from '87 to '93. He was leaving the WWF, and then Bam Bam was coming back for the first time since 1987, and he was making a big impact. So he beat the Big Boss Man on that night, and he became a pretty big name in WWF up between then and '95, the end of '95. So WWF Royal Rumble 1993 was entertaining. We seen the debut of Lex Luger at that event as Bobby the Brain Heenan. He became Bobby the Brain Heenan's main kind of go-to guy whenever Ric Flair was leaving the company in early '93. So he was going back to WCW, but a long-time rival of Ric Flair's in WCW, Lex Luger, was coming into the WWF at that time, and he was revealed in the big revealing of Narcissus, of course, the big as the bodybuilder kind of guy, and that was a storyline, and he was going to be pitted against Mr. Perfect, who had been in a rivalry with Ric Flair, and he wanted somebody to destroy Perfect, so he was Lex Luger was coming in to try and do that, and then of course it culminated in the Luger versus Perfect match at WrestleMania 9. But also in 1993 in the Rumble, we seen the very, very solid match between Bret the Hitman Hart and Razor Ramon. The Hitman, of course, was defending his title, which he had defended on a weekly basis on TV shows, and he had brought it to the Survivor Series, defended it against Shawn Michaels in '92, and then the next, of course, pay-per-view was the Rumble in '93, and he was defending against Razor Ramon, who was a good buddy of Ric Flair's, and of course he teamed up with Flair against Macho Man and Perfect at the Survivor Series. So he was like because Flair was kind of on the way out of WWF at the time, he was like the next guy to be coached by Heenan kind of thing, but it didn't really work out like that. They didn't really have that happen. But on commentary in the 1993 Rumble, Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon, they had done a lot of commentary in the few Rumbles before that, and they are very entertaining. Traditionally, everyone loves the entertainment between Monsoon and Heenan, so it was a perfect fit for this Rumble. So 1993 Rumble, really good. One other big ingredient to this one, actually a few other. The Steiner brothers debuted in the WWF. Of course, they came over from WCW. And now when I'm talking about all this, you realise that it really was a changing of the guard as far as the WWF goes. They were bringing a lot of people in from WCW. They were getting a lot of people were leaving the company. Hulk Hogan had left after WrestleMania 8, and we didn't know if he was coming back at this stage. He eventually did come back, and he'd worked a program with Yokozuna and with the $1 Million Man and IRS at WrestleMania 9 and King of the Ring, but we didn't know that at this stage. That happened. He came back a few weeks after this. But the Rumble of '93, very entertaining. I would say it's definitely number 8 on my list. And there's one match that we haven't mentioned from this Royal Rumble, and that match is, there's two matches we haven't really touched on from the Rumble. The actual Rumble itself, which I'll talk about in a minute, but the actual, one of the top matches of 1993, and the rematch from this was the top match of 1993. Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty, the Rockers, who had split up a year before this, but then Jannetty was fired because of not showing up or alcoholism or something. Jannetty, of course, was a bit of a he was known for being fired and stuff back in the day for partying and stuff like that, so that was a kind of a Rockers thing. But the Rockers split up then anyway, went their separate ways, and Shawn Michaels became the big star, and he was being elevated to the moon, and Jannetty was still a kind of singles wrestler forever kind of thing, a mid-card for life kind of thing, unfortunately, because I thought he had more potential. But Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels put on some great matches, because I suppose they knew each other so well as a tag team over the years. They were able to put on brilliant matches and have great chemistry with each other in the ring. But definitely a great match between them two at the Rumble in '93. And then the actual Rumble match itself was an excellent matchup in 1993. One thing we did see at the '93 Rumble was the debut of the Giant Gonzalez. And the Giant Gonzalez, of course, was the guy that came in Harvey Whippleman, you know the manager Harvey Whippleman, kind of a gangster style manager. He brought Gonzalez in, who is George Gonzalez, Argentinian wrestler, former basketball player. Ted Turner. Here's a bit of trivia. Ted Turner saw George Gonzalez playing basketball for Dallas or some team like that, and he brought him into. I think maybe it was the Atlanta Braves, one of them basketball teams anyway, the Atlanta teams, and they brought him in to WCW back in I think it was 1990, and he brought him in to be, the big giant, because he's 7'6". He was the biggest athlete at this time in the world, and he was really big, and he wasn't, he was just kind of a big, skinny guy, but not really skinny, but Gonzalez, they give him the name Giant Gonzalez when he came to WWF. He was known as El Gigante in WCW, giant or Spanish for the giant. But when he came to WWF, he became the Giant Gonzalez, and they give him a big, like one of them werewolf, or not werewolf, but animal-esque kind of bodysuit, and made him like a big monster, like a yeti or something like that. And it was, a lot of people downplay it and say it was an embarrassment, say it was, it was being too gimmicky, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was very entertaining, and it was a change to see this big Giant Gonzalez coming in the middle of the Rumble when he wasn't an entrant, and he was in to destroy the Undertaker. It was actually, the storyline went that it was for the Undertaker, it was to destroy him for what he done to Kamala, who was Harvey Whippleman's main guy at that time. So he, of course, the Undertaker had a big program with Kamala at SummerSlam and Survivor Series in '92. So this was January '93. He was bringing in Gonzalez to destroy the Undertaker for that. But very good Royal Rumble. Yokozuna, the man from Polynesia, he was actually from the Samoan Islands, or the one of them places over there in the kind of Pacific Ocean. He was from there, but they dubbed him as a Japanese, from Tokyo, Japan, because he had that look. And Yokozuna was actually The Rock's cousin, and he was related to all them Samoan wrestlers are all related, so it's like a Samoan family tree. But Yokozuna won the Rumble in '93. He went on to be a pretty big deal, winning the title from Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9 before losing it to Hulk Hogan, and then winning it back at King of the Ring. And almost the entire 1993 had Yokozuna as world champion, and then he was a tag champ with Owen Hart over the next few years before leaving at the end of '96, and I think he done a couple of he just didn't really wrestle anymore. But Yokozuna, definitely brilliant. He was very good as the winner of this Rumble, putting out the Macho Man Randy Savage in the final two in that particular Royal Rumble. As far as any other goings on in this Royal Rumble, it was very entertaining. One of my favourites because of the fact that it was my first to watch really as a kid. It was only, what age was I? 93. I was only 6, or I was only 5 at the time, so I was able to watch it, and I think I just watched a repeat of it actually. But it was it was a fun Royal Rumble. Anyway, moving on, the seventh, number 7 on our list of the top 10 Royal Rumbles of all time. Well, this one is one that I would have seen in later years as a fan, as getting the DVD or getting the videos. I got the video cassette of this one. I think I got a lend of it at first, and then I eventually bought the Tag Classic DVD that the WWF started bringing out. And this Royal Rumble was very, very entertaining as far as showing you one of the earlier Rumbles. When I was younger, I used to really like this Rumble, and as time went on, I wouldn't be as big into this Royal Rumble, but it's not, the replay value of this particular one isn't as entertaining as some of the others. But I love the intro. I'm going to try and include the intro to one of these to a few of these Rumbles because the intros used to be very, very entertaining with Vince McMahon saying each wrestler's name, and it would show a picture of them, and then it would show the real exciting voice of McMahon when he introduces the Rumble, and kind of like a big hyped up intro to it. That was really entertaining. But the '89 Rumble, that's what I'm talking about. 1989 Royal Rumble, great show, and there was a women's match. I think it was the Jumping Angels against the Jumping Bomb Angels against the. It was a tag team women's match anyway. That was, I just usually skip that match because they didn't really give the woman of wrestling a fair shout back then. There was no real storylines. It was just a match here and there, the odd pay-per-view and stuff, and never really had storylines for them, which I thought was, because nowadays, that is one thing about the modern wrestling. Nowadays in women's wrestling, it's a really good, they really give them a lot of time. There's a big push for women's wrestling, which is great because it mirrors the rest of the sports industry, because women are getting a fair shout, which is good to see. Then of course we look at this is the '89 Rumble. We're looking at a good 6-man tag in there. The Hart Foundation teamed up with Hacksaw Jim Duggan against the Rougeau brothers and Dino Bravo. That was a good one. 2 out of 3 falls. 6-man tag, so that was pretty cool. The next big match then from the '89 Rumble was the match between, there's the Super Pose Down, it was called, and it was of course between Ravishing Rick Rude and the Ultimate Warrior. The Warrior had come in 1988, and he had made a big impact, and Ravishing Rick Rude was. He had come into the WWF in '87, and Rude and the Warrior started a massive rivalry then over the next couple of years, and it was very entertaining. And it was called the Super Pose Down because they were both very proud of their physiques and stuff, and it was a good storyline, the start of a good storyline. But the actual Rumble itself from 1989 was entertaining. It had, of course, Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man Randy Savage had the whole Mega Powers thing going on, and they had been teaming up and wrestling in singles competition. The Macho Man had just won the world title at the 1988 WrestleMania 4, in the big tournament, and Hogan was kind of stealing the spotlight from Savage a lot, and he was really being a bit of an asshole, really, as far as that. But he always had a lot of power, and he liked to play, as they called it, politics with the owner, Vince McMahon, of course, and him were good buddies, and they really did work. They geared everything to favour Hogan, really. But Macho Man Randy Savage was the champion for the whole year nearly the full year of '88 and some of '89. But there was starting a bit of friction in the Mega Powers around Rumble time in 1989, and of course, Miss Elizabeth, who was the Macho Man's wife at the time, but kayfabe, she wasn't his wife. They weren't married as far as the storyline goes, but she was his, as they say in the wrestling business, his valet, which is like a woman manager that doesn't do a lot. But she was of course, in his corner, and Hulk Hogan and Macho Man were managed by her. Hulk Hogan on screen would have flirted a lot with her. They would have done a lot of, got close and stuff, and Savage didn't like that. Of course, Macho Man Randy Savage, both on screen and known behind the scenes as very, very possessive and stuff. So he was, he really didn't like the whole team up of Hogan and himself. So what happened then was the explosion of the Mega Powers. It kind of started happening at the Rumble, and then it culminated at the Royal Rumble, or at the WrestleMania 5 in April of '89, which was a big, great match. Of course, Hogan won the title off Savage. But yes, the '89 Rumble, very entertaining. Big John Studd won that particular Rumble match. On commentary for the '89 Rumble was Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. Of course, a lot of people out there would know Jesse Ventura as the later governor of Minnesota, and he's now known, of course, as the guy behind Conspiracy Theory, the guy behind so many of these shows online on Aura TV and different things, and True TV. Very, very entertaining personality, and he was a very entertaining commentator. He was a wrestler before that, but he had to give up wrestling because of that. He had spots on his lungs, so he had to give up wrestling because of that. So Ventura, one of my favorite commentators of all time, and really loud voice, really always, his motto was, "I tell it like it is," and that was really cool. He was a really cool wrestler, very, very, never was scared to say what he thought on the commentary, even if he wasn't supposed to. He still said stuff which was cool to watch and listen to. So yes, good show, 1989 Rumble, very entertaining. Moving on now to number 6 on my list, and this one, number 6, I would say one of my favourites, probably the first, I think it was the first Rumble that I would have got on video, on VHS, and it was the one that I really enjoyed, and it was the first Royal Rumble that Hulk Hogan, it was the second Royal Rumble that Hulk Hogan won. He won the Rumble match, and it was the 1991 Royal Rumble, and it was a very good show. In this particular event, Dusty and Dustin Rhodes, the Rhodes family, teamed up, a father and son team, versus the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase and Virgil. And after that particular match, we seen Virgil turn on the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase in a great moment, and that of course culminated in their feud and their matches at WrestleMania 7 in 91 and SummerSlam 91. So great for storyline there. Also in the 91 Royal Rumble, a good match between Coco Beware went up against the Mountie, but that's only on certain versions of the Rumble, because there is of course a couple of different versions of the Royal Rumble out on sale, but on the WWE Network version I don't think that match is included. But Coco Beware and the Mountie was a very entertaining match as well. I was able to see it on YouTube obviously, but also in the 91 Rumble, a big world title match between Ultimate Warrior and Sergeant Slaughter, and that of course culminated in the Macho Man Randy Savage helping Slaughter, and of course setting up that big match at WrestleMania 7, a retirement match between the Macho Man and the Ultimate Warrior, which was one of my favourite matches of all time. But the match between Slaughter and the Warrior was decent, but Slaughter winning the world title was one of the big shocks that, you know, shook the world of wrestling. And that set up, when Hogan then won the Rumble, that particular outcome set up the match between Hogan and Slaughter at WrestleMania 7 in 91 as well. So a very good Royal Rumble 1991, I have to say, it is definitely worthy of the number 6 spot in this top 10. Just trying to think, is there any more big happenings or goings on from that 91 Rumble? You had a good load of people in the Rumble itself. Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich had come up from WCCW at this stage. He was doing well for himself, and he was in this Rumble for the first time. Hogan won the Rumble by putting out Earthquake last. They had had a big rivalry, so it was fitting that they were the last two in the ring during the Rumble. Of course, they met in a big match at SummerSlam 1990, and so it was a good Royal Rumble, and I enjoyed it. The Rockers went up against the Orient Express in the opening match of the 91 Rumble, which was a very good match. And another fairly good match was the Barbarian versus the Big Boss Man in that particular Royal Rumble. So there you go. We're going to break from the countdown now, and we're going to have a few honourable mentions of the Royal Rumble. Commentary for the 1991 Royal Rumble was Gorilla Monsoon and Rowdy Roddy Piper. So, and I thought now that was a very good commentary team for the Rumble. But anyway, now we're going to go with a few honourable mentions, and one of the first mention for the Royal Rumbles would be the 2003 Royal Rumble. It was an entertaining Rumble. Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho had a bit of a rivalry going at the time, and they had the whole Michaels went in at number 1, and Jericho came in from behind and eliminated him and stuff, and then later in the Rumble, Michaels came in and eliminated Jericho, and they set up their match at WrestleMania 19. Also at the 2003 Rumble, Brock Lesnar came out on top. He of course had come in 2002, became a massive star, and I've got a feeling that he's going to win this year again, 2016. He's on top of the pile, really becoming a big star, and it is for the title this year. First time ever the title's being defended by Roman Reigns, so I think Lesnar might just come out on top. So yeah, Lesnar put out The Undertaker in the final 2 in the ring in the 2003 Royal Rumble. So there you go. The 1994 Royal Rumble is another mention that we'd like to put in. It saw, of course, the big moment in the casket match between Yokozuna and The Undertaker, where The Undertaker had the resurrection kind of moment, and it was very entertaining. Of course, the whole Yokozuna had an army of men jumping him and cutting in the ring, and just looked like they destroyed him. And then they had where the Undertaker flashed up on the screen and stuff. It was very good stuff at the time. Also, at the '94 Rumble, co-winners for the first time ever, Lex Luger and Bret the Hitman Hart were the co-winners of that Rumble, and I thought it was a pretty good Rumble, a stellar Royal Rumble match. It was an eventful enough Rumble. It was, of course, in '94 we were deep into the new generation of the WWF, that whole concept of the new generation. A lot of people had come in from WCW, and a lot of people had went out to WCW from the golden era, and it was okay. Bret the Hitman Hart was teaming with Owen Hart as the brothers Hart went up against the Quebecers, who was the Mountie, teaming up with Pierre, Jacques and Pierre, the Quebecers, the French Canadians, and it was a decent match, but it ended up, of course, with Owen Hart and Bret Hart not being able to resolve their brotherly rivalry, and it ended up, of course, in the match between them two at WrestleMania 10, which Owen won, but you might recall Bret went on to win the main event against Yokozuna. So the '94 Rumble, very entertaining. Also, pretty good match in that Rumble as well, between Tatanka, the Native American Indian character, and Bam Bam Bigelow. Also, Razor Ramon beat the IRS in an Intercontinental title match. Right. Also, that was a very good Royal Rumble. 1988 Royal Rumble is another mention that I want to bring up, and the '88 one was the first one ever. Hacksaw Jim Duggan won it, putting out the one-man gang in the final 2. The '88 Royal Rumble only featured 20 wrestlers. Went on, of course, every Rumble thereafter, except for 2011, which had 40. Every Rumble thereafter had 30. In the 1988 Rumble, a very good Royal Rumble. Also, one of the moments in that particular pay-per-view was another interesting point there. It wasn't a pay-per-view in 1988. It was just a special event that took place on the US. I think it was on NBC. So there you go. Dino Bravo had a bodybuilding kind of thing in the 1988 Royal Rumble as well, where he lifting so many pounds or whatever. But it was a good show. It was good for free TV, or for to be on cable and not have to be the pay-per-view, I believe. But it was only in America, I think. But then another mention would be the 2000 Royal Rumble, and in the 2000 Royal Rumble, a great show. Just not worth. It probably would have got 11 or 12 if I was counting it down, and so, but didn't make the top 10 for me. But it was a good show. It featured the famous street fight between Triple H and Cactus Jack. Very good street fight. Of course, it was in Madison Square Garden in New York, and they had the place like a real street and stuff, the entrance area, and it was very entertaining. Then the other big matches, the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys in a tables match, brilliant match. And then of course Taz made his debut coming over from ECW, where he beat Kurt Angle, who had been undefeated up until that point. And then the Rumble match itself, I would say, would be the downfall of this event, because I just didn't really enjoy that particular Rumble match. But it was okay for what it was. But I think if it was a better Rumble match, it probably would have made the top 10. The Rumble was won by The Rock. He putting out the big show last. The Rock really making a big name for himself. He was probably the biggest name of the year 2000 in wrestling. Okay, the next one, the Royal Rumble 2006, is another one that really didn't make the top 10, but it was close to it. It featured the returns of Native American Indian Tatanka. It also featured, I believe, Hacksaw Jim Duggan coming back for the Rumble. Others in the 2006 Royal Rumble, big matches between JBL and the Boogeyman. That was very funny. And then other pretty good matches were Edge versus John Cena. A few other good moments in the 2006 Rumble. The Rumble itself was won by, trying to think now, who was the Rumble won by in 2006? I think the 2006 Rumble was, yes, it was won by Rey Mysterio, and he of course put out Randy Orton and Kurt Angle in the final three in the ring. So Mysterio went on to win the world title at WrestleMania 22. So it was a good moment, especially Eddie Guerrero had died the previous November, and he was the big star of 2004, 2005, and he had died, so it was a great tribute that his best friend Rey Mysterio won the title. And there was a lot of talk since that it was just in his memory and stuff, and they wouldn't have given it to Mysterio if it wasn't for Guerrero, but you know, it is what it is now. 2007 Rumble, another one I could mention now, and in 2007 it had finally happened. The Undertaker won the Royal Rumble, and you know, he had been such a big star of the wrestling world up until that point. He actually won it in 2007, so that was a pretty significant time in wrestling. There you go. So the 2007 Rumble won by the Undertaker, and it's a fairly stellar Royal Rumble. Shawn Michaels and the Undertaker were the first two in the ring for that Royal Rumble, and then Undertaker eliminated Shawn Michaels at the end of it to win it. A very entertaining Royal Rumble. So there you go, folks. That's the honourable mentions. Talked about 6 Royal Rumbles there that didn't make the top 10. Now we're going to go in and talk about the top 5 Royal Rumbles. We're going to recap the top number 10 to number 6 now first. Number 10, the 1997 Royal Rumble. Number 9, the 1998 Royal Rumble. Number 8, the 1993 Royal Rumble. And number 7, the 1989 Royal Rumble. and at number 6, the 1991 Royal Rumble. So now we go and we look at number 5. And number 5 in my top 10 Royal Rumbles of all time pay-per-views would be the 2001 Royal Rumble. And the 2001 Royal Rumble was won by Stone Cold Steve Austin, winning his 3rd Royal Rumble match. In 2001 he put out Kane in the final 2. Kane had outlasted loads of other wrestlers, and he had actually eliminated 11, which was the biggest ever amount of eliminations in a Rumble, and Kane was the man up until that point. But Austin, with the help of a steel chair, eliminated him to win it, and it was a star-studded Royal Rumble. So many big names. The Rock was there, also Rikishi, also people like Triple H, Stone Cold, as I said, Kane, The Undertaker, even returns in this Rumble. The returns were brilliant. The Big Show came back after being out for a few months. Haku, who had been away from the WWF since 1992, came back into it in 2001 for the Rumble. Also, people like the 91 Royal Rumble featured the Honky Tonk Man, came into it, and of course was trying to sing for the crowd, and then Kane got his guitar and smashed it over his head and eliminated him. That was a very funny moment. Also coming in for that Rumble was Drew Carey. The comedian, American comedian Drew Carey made an appearance for the 2001 Royal Rumble, and he was royally defeated by Kane. So it was an entertaining Rumble match. And it was the first ever hardcore Rumble as well, because in the middle of it, Raven came in and pretty much made the Rumble a Raven's Rules match, because he brought in a load of weaponry and stuff, and there was about 7 or 8 entrants that just had a hardcore match together, and then once they were all eliminated by Kane, he read the ring of all the weapons and it became a normal Rumble again. So then the one-on-one matches and the tag matches and that for the pre-Rumble in 2001 were brilliant. The Dudley Boys went against Edge and Christian in a tag titles match to start off, and then the other matches were one of the greatest ladder matches of all time between Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. Jericho from, of course, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Benoit from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So 2 Canadians in a ladder match for the Intercontinental title. Brilliant, brilliant match. Unfortunately, these days, Benoit doesn't get any recognition from the WWF or the WWE, I should say, because of his actions and the whole thing that went on with him back in 2007. But the late Chris Benoit, a legend of the business, nonetheless. The title match, the match for the title of the 2001 event, was Kurt Angle versus Triple H, I think. Yes, it was Kurt Angle and Triple H for the title at the 2001 event as well. Very good. The next one now, number 4 on the list of the top 10 Royal Rumbles of all time. Well, number 4, folks, has to be the 1996 Royal Rumble. I just watched it there last night. Very entertaining show. I watched it on the WWE Network last night. I have to say, Mr. Perfect and Vince McMahon on commentary, great combination. I know they had been well used to each other because they were commentators for Superstars back in 91 and 92, and they were very entertaining. And Perfect, of course, hyping up the whole coming in of Vader from WCW at the time, and Vader came in and made a big impact. And the other big things that went on in that Rumble was Shawn Michaels winning it for the second year in a row, and also the big rivalry, starting off the rivalry between The Undertaker and Diesel, Big Daddy Cool Diesel. And Bret Hart went against The Undertaker in the title match, and it was the first year that the title match actually happened after the Rumble match, which I thought was I didn't like that idea because it took away from the significance of the Royal Rumble, I thought, but it was a good match between Hart and The Undertaker. They also done something at the Rumble in '96 that I thought was very entertaining, and they should have done from there on, but they didn't, and that was Royal Rumble Plus. They brought you backstage to tell you everything that was going on. It was kind of like a post show like they do now on the network, and they brought you interviews with the winners and losers and the different. It was very, very good stuff. Jake the Snake Roberts returned for the '96 Rumble. Other people that were involved in it, a few Japanese stars were in it. A couple of people from other territories in America went into the '96 Rumble, like from the USWA, which was of course ran by Jerry the King Lawler. A few other people. Some good goings on at the 1996 Royal Rumble. Very entertaining show. On the pre-show, the pre-Rumble, in the '96 one, Jeff Jarrett went against Ahmed Johnson. Razor Ramon lost the Intercontinental title to Goldust, who had just come in, formerly known as Dustin Rhodes, of course, and became Goldust in the WWF, making his debut at the Survivor Series of '95, where he defeated Bam Bam Bigelow. There you go. But the '96 Rumble, very entertaining overall, and hard to beat. Number 3 on the top 10 Royal Rumbles of all time would be, without a doubt, the 1990 Royal Rumble. And in the 1990 Royal Rumble, Hulk Hogan made his first Royal Rumble win, putting out Mr. Perfect at the end and the last two in the ring. Very good, entertaining event. That's why it's number 3. It was a very good show from start to finish. A few tag team matches at this event, about three tag team matches. Also, good matches between. It was a good match. The 1990. Let me think now. Well, the match itself, the Royal Rumble match itself, some big names. The Macho King, Randy Savage, he was a bad guy at this stage. He was in there. Roddy Piper was in it. People like Hulk Hogan, Mr. Perfect, people like so many big names at the 1990 Royal Rumble. It was just an out-and-out entertaining Rumble match. Commentary on this event was Tony Schiavone and Jesse the Body Ventura. Schiavone, or Schiavone as they used to call him, Schiavone was a very entertaining guy to listen to on the mic and commentary. I think he gets a bad rap these days. A lot of people don't like him, or weren't entertained by his way of talking or his way of going on and stuff in commentary, but I really enjoyed Schiavone in commentary, especially during the Nitro years of WCW. But I think he was particularly in his early years in WWF. He spent a year in the WWF and he done commentary on the 1989 SummerSlam, and he also commentated on the 1990 Royal Rumble, and I thought he was entertaining. Ventura and himself maybe didn't have as good a commentary as Ventura and McMahon or Ventura and Monsoon, but he definitely was good enough with Schiavone as well, and they would later team up as commentators in WCW in '92 and beyond. So there you go. Entertaining Royal Rumble overall. The 1990 Royal Rumble, which is number 3 in the top 10 Royal Rumbles of all time. Number 2, we're coming to a close now, folks. Number 2 in the 2002 is the 2002 Royal Rumble. A very, very good Royal Rumble card. I watched it about 4 or 5 months ago. I thought it was very entertaining. The big highlight, the one I always think of, match that I always think of in this one, obviously the Rumble match was excellent, but the pre-Rumble match that has always come to mind is Vince McMahon versus Ric Flair in a street fight. The whole storyline with Flair taking over half of the company as part of the consortium for the WWF after the invasion had ended. The WCW ECW invasion storyline lasted from about March, April till November in 2001. Then the night after Survivor Series, the winner take all Survivor Series in 2001, Flair made an appearance after the WWF had won the war between the two. Flair makes an appearance and says he's bought half of the company. And then, of course, this big rivalry between Flair and McMahon ensued, and McMahon ended up beating Ric Flair. McMahon ended up having a great street fight with Ric Flair at the Rumble, and Flair beat him, and it set up nicely the whole storyline then between The Undertaker and Ric Flair going into WrestleMania 18, and then of course the brand split happened after that between when McMahon took over SmackDown and Flair took over Raw, and it was a good storyline as things went on, but it was a very entertaining match at the time. Chris Jericho went against The Rock for the title at the 2002 Rumble, which was a very entertaining match as well. Also, the actual Rumble itself was excellent. Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin were both like the big guys, the guys that everyone thought was going to win this. Triple H had just come back from his quad injury, and he had been out since I think it was July of 2001, and he had been teaming with Austin up until that point as the two-man power trip, and then after that he had left, and the whole invasion storyline happened when he was gone, and then Austin was back to his old self at this stage. So him and Austin had a big confrontation during the Rumble in 2002, which was good, and then other things that went on. So many happenings in that Rumble match. Kurt Angle was in that Rumble. So many big names. Undertaker was in the Rumble in 2002. Kane. So many legends. Of course, the Big Show as well. But comebacks. A few comebacks in this Rumble. Goldust made an appearance. He hadn't been in it for a while. The Big Boss Man came back for this one. The Godfather made an appearance for this one, as did an industry legend, and he had been in WCW, but he had never been back in the WWF since 1996, and I'm talking about Mr. Perfect. Kurt Hennig came back for the 2002 Royal Rumble, and he had a great outing, and he ended up being one of the final four with Angle, Austin, and Triple H. The Rumble was eventually won by Triple H, and of course after his big comeback and stuff, he won the Royal Rumble and went on to win the title at WrestleMania 18. But great Royal Rumble, the 2002 Rumble. I really enjoyed that one, and that was of course the start of the Ruthless Aggression era, as they call it. Number 1 in the top 10 Royal Rumbles of all time. We've come down to the number 1, and I think you'll already know if you have any interest in Royal Rumbles. You'll probably know which one I'm going to say, because I often talk about it being the best ever, and that is, well, I'm going to recap now the top 10 on 10 to 2. We'll recap now. At number 10, the 1997 Royal Rumble. Number 9, the 1998 Royal Rumble. At number 8, the 1993 Royal Rumble. And at number 7, the 1989 Royal Rumble. Number 6, the 1991 Royal Rumble. At number 5, the 2001 Royal Rumble. Number 4, the 1996 Royal Rumble. At number 3, the 1990 Royal Rumble. And at number 2, the 2002 Royal Rumble. At number 1 is a Rumble that I watched just about a week ago, I think it was, and on the WWE Network, and it was an excellent Royal Rumble, and I have to only be talking about the 1992 Royal Rumble, and it was in all its glory. Such a great card and such a great Rumble match. The legends upon legends in this Royal Rumble were unbelievable. It took place in Albany, New York, and it was an out and out excellent show. Ric Flair won the Rumble itself, came in at number 3 and lasted over 62 minutes to win the Rumble. The commentary from Bobby Heenan and, of course, the Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon was brilliant in this one. Also, it had people like the Legion of Doom went up against the Natural Disasters in the 92 Rumble in the pre-show. Of course, the Legion of Doom versus the Disasters, big match for the tag titles. Also in the 92 Rumble, great match between the New Foundation, who was Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and Owen Hart, who, of course, Owen replaced Bret in the Hart Foundation. They called it the New Foundation. They went up against the team of the Orient Express, led by Mr. Fuji, of course. Then, also in the 92 Rumble, a very good match between, let me see now, the Bushwhackers went up against the Beverly Brothers. Fairly good tag team match. A couple of other pretty good matches on the actual pre-Rumble card. Entertaining. A lot of the interviews with Mean Gene and all these Rumbles were very entertaining. Mean Gene Okerlund, of course, the brilliant interviewer. Yes, indeed, great Royal Rumble. Ric Flair, of course, beat Hulk Hogan and Sid Justice, and of course the Macho Man Randy Savage. That was the final four of this Rumble. Roddy Piper, who had won against, I forgot to mention that, Piper beat the Mountie for the Intercontinental title earlier in the night. Of course, the Mountie had beat Bret Hart for the title a few days earlier, and Bret Hart was down with a bad flu at the time, so this was the only ever pay-per-view event that Bret Hart had to miss because of sickness. He missed this Royal Rumble, and Piper went up against the Mountie in the Intercontinental title match. He beat him, and then he was going for all the gold when he was going in, because it was the first ever Royal Rumble that the world title was on the line in the Rumble itself. Because if you may recall, Hulk Hogan had fought against The Undertaker at the 1991 Survivor Series, which was dubbed the Gravest Challenge, of course, and The Undertaker beat Hogan, but with outside interference from Ric Flair. So then there was a match set up the next week in Texas called This Tuesday in Texas, which was in San Antonio, Texas, and Hogan won the title back from The Undertaker. But then Jack Tunney, the kayfabe president of the WWF, which was, well, of course, and if you're just stumbling across this video and you're not a big wrestling fan, kayfabe actually means storyline manager or storyline president. You know, McMahon's in charge of all the stuff behind the scenes, but he, of course, cast him as the president. So yeah, Jack Tunney was the kayfabe president of the WWF, and he made the ruling that Hulk Hogan had to vacate the title, and the Undertaker and Hulk Hogan got special entrances. So Undertaker came in at number 1 or at number 21, I believe, and Hogan came in at number 26 in the Rumble. So so many big names in this Royal Rumble. Sergeant Slaughter was there, the British Bulldog. Shawn Michaels had just become the Heartbreak Kid, transitioning from his rocker persona, and then so many big legendary characters at the 1992 Royal Rumble. Probably the most entertaining Rumble of all time as it went on. The whole thing with Flair, Flair lasting the 62 minutes from coming in at number 3 to being to winning the whole thing, outlasting the 29 other wrestlers. Bobby Heenan kept having these sayings, like when Flair would get beat up, he would say, "That's not fair to Flair," and stuff like this. Was very entertaining. Heenan complaining was one of the biggest entertainment aspects of the Rumbles and the history of the Rumbles. But the '92 one, Heenan had his best hour as a wrestling commentator. But this was his greatest hour as a commentator, definitely. So yes, indeed, the 1992 Royal Rumble, the number 1 in my all-time favorite Royal Rumble events, has to be, without a shadow of a doubt. Well, it has been the Kyoster, folks. It has been CKTV, and I've been bringing you my favorite all-time best top 10 Royal Rumbles with a few honourable mentions in between. And I'm looking forward to the 2016 Royal Rumble. I'm not too fussed on the modern era of wrestling. The product these days isn't much. Well, it's okay, but it's not the best. But as a loyal fan of wrestling, I like to stick with it and see what's happening. So I'll be watching it on the WWE Network next Sunday night. And if you're a wrestling fan, it's much better and much cheaper to get the network than to pay £20 or £25 on the Sky Box Office Rumble or whatever the other method is of playing. You can pay $9.99 or $12.99 in Ireland, and you can get all the WWE library for the whole month. Get the first month free, but you can do that, and it's a lot cheaper than getting it on Sky or through Sky or through if you're in America, through the cable or whatever. Definitely worth it, and you get all the pay-per-views free then once you pay for the whole library. So WWE Network is a pretty cool deal. But right now, anyway, I'm going to leave you all to it, folks. I'm going to get my train out of here, and right now I'm going to see you all later. So let's get ready to rumble. Kyoster over, ha ha, and out.